Welcome to this Athletic Director U exclusive with Dwayne Peevy, the Deputy AD for the University of Kentucky, and near and dear to my heart, Kentucky's influencer's first ever client when we started our business a little less than 2 years ago. And Dwayne, I really want to start with the topic of social media as it pertains to coaches and players. Kentucky basketball is a unique place in the respect that not many places can a high-profile young athlete decide to go play and not be as active as their coach on social and not have the following that their coach has on social. I mean, Coach Cal is a model on social media in a lot of different ways, and you had a big hand in starting that with his Twitter way back during that special season in 2009.
Well, it's interesting because I got to University of Kentucky. First of all, it's good to talk to you, Jim, but I got to Kentucky the year before Coach Cal. So when he arrived in April of '09, he had asked me some questions about Twitter. And fortunately, I had played around with it for about 2 weeks prior to that. We started up a Twitter account pretty shortly thereafter. And little did we know then, it was the best way to interact with the fans that had all these questions about this new coach we have. Keep in mind, this is April. We don't play a game until November or even exhibition or madness in October. So we had all this time where our fan base, normally they go to the blogs or message boards to find out where Coach Calipari was here, or I saw him here, or I met him. What did you find out about him? How is he a nice guy? All those things because we haven't played any games. Well, Twitter became that place. We were doing 2 or 3 a day, and then we became with Motivational Monday with a quote, and it became all these different things, and it was fun. But then you started realizing how many people we were adding as followers. I mean, before you knew it, we had 10,000 followers. And then I remember USC calling us. Pete Carroll was there at the time. They had about 14,000. They wanted to do like a Twitter chat, a Q&A to both coaches just to help grow their following. Well, we shot to 20 past them, took off the incentive for them to do it, so we never did anything. And the biggest thing that changed it for us is that Twitter made us one of the top 20 people that they suggested you follow when you signed up.
It was that new.
Yes. So at that point, Cal was one of the 20 people that you got when you signed up for Twitter. And you had to decide if you wanted to keep him or not. So as it went on, he grew, and we were able to maintain a lot of those followers. A lot of them were Kentucky fans, a lot of them were basketball fans, a lot of people were just new to Twitter in general. And it was entertaining enough. The good thing for me is that it made me have to talk to my basketball coach. At the time, I was a sports information director, 3-4 times a day. So I was actually executing it, but he was calling 3-4 times a day. It was on his mind. The way he pointed it is that if I can take 5 minutes out of my day to do this, that's not much. But being able to impact, at the time, we didn't think it was a recruiting thing. None of our kids on the team were on it. So it was just really, from a branding standpoint, getting out in front of things that now are commonplace. But by the time the season started, we had 1 million followers.
It's amazing.
And it was like, oh, now we've got this tool that we didn't even know. It was a toy early on, but now how do you impact lives? How do you talk to different people? How do you bring awareness to different things? And a lot of people started contacting us. And that whole season, the John Wall, DeMarcus, Eric Bledsoe team, none of those guys were on Twitter for that year. It might have been a lot more entertaining, but they didn't really get on until after their freshman year. And then it just really expanded with CoachCal.com, everything else with the Kentucky men's basketball brand, that whole year, the fun year, just be able to, go back and look. I love to go back and look at all the tweets that we did just that whole year, because it was just a new wave of things that we were doing.
So many different things come to mind when you tell that story, but first off, that was a special season. I mean, anyone watching this remembers that team, that season, and the idea of social media and technology in general either being a weapon of mass destruction or a weapon of mass production is something that we always talk about at Influencer. And for you built something before the season began, before you even knew that team was going to do what they did, that allowed Coach Cal and Kentucky's brand to be ready for the moment. And so just how important is that to have that foundation laid with the team accounts, with coaches' accounts, even with players' accounts, as attention will go to you on Twitter and Instagram because of the moments that are happening in the arena and in the season?
Yeah, early on, I didn't realize that was such a focal part of even what my job might be. I worked at the SEC office prior to that. We weren't really into the social media age, but getting out in front of it, realizing those tools are what you could do to really promote your program. When I got there at Kentucky, we started our own blog the first time. I don't remember any of our peers that were doing it right then. Eric Lindsay, who's now in my old role as the sports information director, I hired him fresh out of school in December of '08. So before this whole thing came into place, we had a blog going on, we had Cal's Twitter going on. We didn't even have one for the school yet.
Yeah.
But we had a Coach Calipari Twitter account, and then CoachCal.com. Those were three main entities that we had that were unlike most things that were out there in the marketplace to be able to promote this magical run with a bunch of freshmen that won 19 straight to start the season. We ended up losing in the Elite Eight, but it was an unbelievable ride. And then you started seeing, I think the attention that came from that, you start seeing the athletes going on. You saw a few NBA athletes that had it during that first year. But after that, all these young guys, all these college kids, the next season, it was definitely a point of contact for us because Cal would talk about it, talk about branding right away. See, I'm on Twitter. They all wanted to be like Cal. You got 1 million followers. It's a big deal. I'm willing to listen to you about branding. And it was important to us then. We were doing media training and social media branding messages that summer with the next group because he realized how big it was because, all of a sudden, everybody knew about Kentucky basketball again.
Right.
We had just went to the NIT.
Right.
Things had just hit a low, and now we were on the forefront, and social media really helped us get there.
And the aspect of now the players coming in, having great careers, leaving, going to the league, growing their influence also complemented the program in a lot of ways for recruiting and to continue growing these accounts like Coach Cal's and the team accounts. You have a unique story, Dwayne. You're an SID by trade, right? That's how you came up in this game, and you've evolved and developed yourself into this role now as Deputy AD at Kentucky. But being a traditionally trained SID, that role has changed dramatically over the past 5 years, let alone the past 15.
That's true.
And so, that is one example of many that now are a part of the job description of an SID versus we got to get a release done right after the game and get it up on the website.
Well, sometimes I like to joke with Eric Lindsay and Dale Moore, like, I know what you guys are doing. This is not that hard. But their jobs now are completely different than the job I had because the social media aspect is such a big part of the job. We actually have a strategic communications department that totally deals with the social pieces with led by Guy Ramsey. Obviously, all of our sports contacts are really inundated into all the social media channels, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, we still do a lot on Facebook and everything else that comes and goes. And now we have to engage our student athletes. We really have to teach them, not just tell them what not to do and get on, but really an opportunity to, hey, this is your first opportunity. Nobody knows who you are. You've been dealing with a small regional following. You come to a national program. It's just like an interview that you're doing. We train them to do those. Why wouldn't we be training them how to interact on social? Because that's an interview every time you post. So now we're helping them build their brand versus being a little fearful of it. I know a lot of people, if you remember one year, we actually asked ESPN to use Twitter accounts on their graphics when guys were going to the free throw line during a Georgia game. And it was a big deal and got plenty of calls, people asking me about it. But we weren't afraid of it. We were basically we didn't want people to not know how to see our posts of our kids. We wanted them to realize everybody's seeing them. So what you put on there is more important. You would think with a program of our magnitude, we'd have more problems from a social media standpoint with athletes. But I think it's the opposite because we've embraced it. Because they know their coaches on it, they're a little more careful what they do on social media. We're already contacting. Once they sign, we're already trying to teach them when they're in high school, before they get here, that we're watching.
Right.
But we're also telling them how to work with it. We're giving them tools. We're giving them, through Influencer, we're helping them with tools and data, but also images, videos. We want them to, it's their brand.
Yeah.
So it only helps us because the biggest thing in Connect we have is our former student athletes. Our fans are so connected to the kids, and it's just really expanding our brand even more.
So you mentioned our relationship between Influencer and Kentucky, and I joked with you before we started filming this. I was in this building 2 years ago to this day meeting with Guy Ramsey and Eric Lindsay, who you've mentioned in this interview sit down today, about this concept that I was putting together, this new company called Influencer, and that led to Kentucky being our first client. It made sense because of a lot of what you just said. There's the don'ts of social media, which a lot of schools have been proactive about bringing in speakers and showing examples of all the horrors, right, of social, and there's plenty to see, but there's the do's. And so equipping the athletes, equipping coach takes resources. And so now let's put your deputy AD hat on that you have now, put it back on and talk about from a structuring org chart and just overall payroll investment situation. There's a lot of new positions that exist on your campus right now and in your athletic department that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Right, and we're currently needing to expand. It's becoming even more of a vital role of what we're doing. So we've got to think about, okay, some of these resources that we might have needed back in the day, or particular people maybe that are doing more graphic design for something that we might outsource now. We now need someone to help us with the actual planning of it. Not just, we got strategic communications department. That started with a blogger that we needed help with, covering games, and we were doing, blogs or writing stories. That was the thing before. Now, really, how do we integrate all those things together? From the UK Athletics program, we've got 16 head coaches, 22 sports. How do we get those things? How do we plan just like we would do anything else? So we've got our ACPR staff, so our athletic communication staff. That's where Eric and Deb are men's basketball. But Guy, and what other staff members does he need? Because that's just as important now. How you're covering that game from a social aspect. I mean, think about all the different outliers and third parties, from graphics that you do or templates that you're building, video. I mean, this is the first year we've traveled all year with 2 people in video. But it's all about video that's going out on social.
Right.
It's not like we're producing anything and we're doing mass productions.
Right.
It's all integrated into what we're trying to do on social. And as you see, some of the best in the country are people that have got ahead of that. And so we've got to keep investing in the people. But I think finally, the importance level, you can feel it on the administrative level too, between Mitch Barnhart, our executive staff. They understand the importance of it too. The first day I brought up Twitter when I was on senior staff back in 2009.
I love this story.
I think it was John Kropp, if I'm not mistaken. He's like, what is this? Tweety Bird? What is this thing? My wife told me about Twitter first, but actually, Eric Santinocencio, a friend of mine that was working at the SEC office, told me about it a little bit more from what I could do with it. And I had to give him credit to Allison first because she was the one that originally told me about it. And I was like, I don't know what it is, but I'll try to play into it. And Eric really convinced me of what it could be. Saw the vision of what we could do. And that was the first time I thought about, this could be a bigger deal than just another social media channel. And that's why we were able to get on. And then, at that time, we hadn't hired a new coach or anything. Then Coach Calipari falls in our laps, and all of a sudden, boom. I mean, really and he was able to help introduce every one of our other head coaches' Twitter accounts. Somebody with 1 million+ followers at the time. If you combine every head coach in the country right now, they don't equate to as many followers as he has. Just showing you the magnitude of what it is from a basketball standpoint. But that helped put us all on the map because all our fans were all following him. All our media were all following him. So I was able to let everybody know what's going on. Now that's just a regular thing. Everybody knows about what social media. They go to social media for information. But I never would have guessed it got this way this fast, but I definitely see it's not stopping and it's going to continue.
So a lot of what you just described is essentially being your own media network, not depending on ESPN or any traditional media network, newspaper, to tell your story for you. Of course they will, right. But telling it yourself, producing not just the media types like video, pictures, designs, but having a creative strategy around it. What's the message going to be? How do we approach this game we lost that our fans are going to be disappointed about versus how do we talk about this win or this big game ahead and an injury and all these things, right? So with that being said, it seems like there has to be a way to quantify success, right? Because it's a media network, audience is one of those ways. And when you look at audience, there's different metrics. There's total followers, there's impressions, there's engagement. When it comes to data for you, like what are you looking at to know and feel the impact that this enormous effort of work and creativity is going toward in your athletic department?
I'll admit, I'm not a big data guy when it comes to social. I'll leave that to Eric and Guy to be able to follow and track and feel those things. But because I've been somewhat in that role before from an administrative side, I feel like I understand the pulse of it. You know, because I like to kind of scroll through it, what feedback I get from our fans on it, the understanding of the daily of it. Because if you're taken away from that, all you really have is the data to be able to push to it. But I engage on social media every day because I want to feel the pulse of it and get ahead of things, or we got issues or things we're not doing well. The data can't tell me that, but I can know that we got a parking issue at baseball, softball, or we need some more fan amenities at our football game. I want to be able to engage those things without them having to be letters written to me or become a magnitude of people. I like engaging that stuff. So I think that's part of it too. But I think part of it is, from an administrative side, it's an advantage for me that I've at least been on the other side, because it's sometimes a hard role to get people that don't get what that means to your department and these student athletes every day. For us at Kentucky, we're a little bit ahead of that. We've been dealing with the social media age within our flow of our department from day one since I've been there, because of really what happened with Coach Calipari and some of those things. I mean, everybody understands. When you have magnitude, everybody understands 1 million people are following it. That's a big deal. So it's a little easier to get people to engage. But now, the recruiting aspects, the young people aspect is what's getting people more invested into it. But it doesn't matter how.
There's a lot of byproducts.
Right. I mean,
like apparel deals
right.
could be more valuable because of the audience being reached on social. Recruits could be following your athletes instead of your team account, right? Like there's byproducts.
There's a reason that our brand is not just on field or on court success. There's a reason that our brand resonates with some other ones that might have a longer history from a football standpoint. You know, we're in the SEC. I mean, look at where our football program is going. But our basketball program's there, but normally just traditional basketball programs are not enough sometimes to get you into that upper echelon. But hey, what if we bring our social following and our social brand awareness to help those other two big entities to what push us to the top? Then that definitely resonates in dollars or deals or, you know, apparel or rights deals and things of that nature. You know, even with our partnering with JMI. I mean, think about it. When they came to us, we were their first client in college sports. One of a lifetime kind of deal to be able to get, but I'm sure when they looked at it, we were a national brand, not just totally focused on just our own court or own field success, because sometimes those things can dip down, right? But that social following, people being engaged, and the eyeballs you get from it, the social piece, I'm sure helped.
Yeah, you could even look at a deal like Drake being involved with the program, having to do with the digital presence of Kentucky to put it on somebody like his radar. I also think that it's interesting to see how Kentucky football was ready for the moment, had a great season, doubled its following on social during this past season, their team accounts and the players combined. So it's a rising tides lifts all boats thing. I tell people that a lot. What if we only have 12 players on our basketball team and nobody has more than 10,000 followers? Rising tides will lift all boats if you tell your story. And so that's where I'm gonna go next, is telling your story. So there's linear ways to do it, like just keep talking about what happened last night or what's going on today. And then there's creative ways to do it, more nonlinear. Like one example would be Steve Forbes. He's a guy who likes to be very comedic on his Twitter. What is your advice for either administrator, coach who's trying to drive the creative side of social for their program?
I really would say, especially based on my experience, just be yourself. If you're a funny person, then that's a great route. But don't try to be a character of something that you're not. Portray who you are, because the biggest things, I think, the interaction with our fans, which normally is who we're interacting with, let them into your world a little bit. Let them know who you are, your family, because then they realize you're just like them or their family, their nieces, nephews, uncles, cousins, spouse. Because then when we have those tough times or things not going great, the human element takes over versus looking at you as this entity on a pedestal because you're a head coach or you're an athletic director. I mean, you gotta let people know I got I got some things, and this is a job. I live it every day. I'm living it out in the open. But I think people are a lot more comfortable when they can come up to you. And that's what you're allowing them to do from a social standpoint. If they can't be around you, you're allowing them to peek in a little bit to what your life is. Coach Calipari's whole role was, I'm going to let everybody into what our program is every day. So then I'm not worried about what people say, write about us, put out there, because you get to see it. You get to see anything and everything about me and my program every day. You don't need to read anything else if you don't want to. And that's just, so don't think about it even in that concept. But from an administrative standpoint, just like a head coach, a new head coach that might just be in their first job, I don't even have social media. I would always encourage them to do that, because whether it's your players, future prospective student athletes, your fan base, your administration, people on our staff. If you're an athletic director, what a great way for everybody on your staff to have a little inkling of who my new boss is to be able to follow them a little bit on social and find out some more personal things about them and their life.
So once you become the athletic director at a university, which you undoubtedly will, do you think that your philosophy on this will change? I mean, you'll at that point have had the experience of SID for a big-time team, administrator at the deputy level, and now the leader of a program, with social really touching all those. You think your philosophy will change?
I definitely hope not. I think my intention would not to be even more. Like, I think I don't purposely engage myself and my family. It's a natural thing. It's who I am. I'm not holding back. I think my family enjoys it. I want people to have a sense of who I am as a person. You can't learn that overnight. It's going to take time. Obviously I look at Mitch, he's been in Kentucky 17 years, so he's built a lot of relationships over time, and once people really get to know you, it gets a lot easier how you're dealing with things. Well, in a new job, you don't have that much time, right? You can't fast forward through 10, 15 years. So how do you let people know who you are as a person at the core, quickly, without a bunch of words, without a speech? How do they know that? So really I think I'll be more purposeful if I'm in that job of communicating, and it might not be it's not like reality TV necessarily, but getting a sense of who you are, like kind of lift the curtain up, so to speak, and kind of get a look at who I am and my family, my friends, people I hang out with, to know. I wouldn't want to shy away from that. Obviously you go into a school and maybe the administration doesn't feel it strongly, and I think there's a way to slowly roll into that, but I don't think it's anything more than what I do right now, because you want to talk about your family, your kids, you want to talk about your wife, you want to talk about all the things that are important to you, you want to talk about your fan base, your teams, support teams. I'm the kind of, I've been brought up in a program that's very connected, family oriented, every sport matters. I hope that's who I am as well. And so I want to show everybody that everything that does matter to me is, and that'll include things from the personal side too.
I love it. And so that means when you're asked the vision for this new program, social is going to be a big part of it.
Yeah. And we're ready to make some investments. It's budget time. And we're trying to figure out some things of how we can make it better for not just our athletics program, but for our student athletes overall planning. How do we teach them the next step? It's just like now, we give them tools, but how do we take it even further to where they can just go overboard in their branding and the structure of it can get better? And that takes people, that takes resources. I mean, you can't do it alone. I mean, we have an unbelievable team right now, but they need resources behind them to be able to take us to the next level.